Everyone's joining in, seeing everyone's faces. Look, we would love you to have your video on if possible. Totally all good if you're like eating lunch or something like that. But we love seeing people's faces. If you don't have video on, totally all fine as well. But if you can, that's fantastic. Great to see everyone just as everyone joins. Hey, just as we join and before we get underway, can you just pop in the chat where you are, right? Where you are in the world and what you do creatively, just as everyone is gathering. Amazing. Fantastic. So, Jess, whereabouts are you at the moment?
I am in Los Angeles right now, and it is 106 degrees today. So it definitely does not feel like a fall weather at all.
That is very, very hot. I can't even imagine that temperature, to be honest. I'm we were just discussing before the call, and we were talking about whether we could hear Jess's AC, which we can't. Don't worry, we can't hear that, which is good. But it sounds like it's very, very hot. So I'm sure your air conditioning is like really trying to do its work at the moment.
On full blast.
There you go. Hey everyone, and I'm actually in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is where I'm based at the moment, which is fantastic. So we're kind of East Coast and over West Coast there covered, which is fantastic. Amazing. We've got everyone adding in the chat where they are and what they do creatively. Amazing. Here we go. Hey Christine, Cleveland, Ohio, good to see you. Amanda, amazing. Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Toronto, muralist and illustrator. Brenna from San Diego, amazing. Cambridge, nice. San Diego, Austin. Oh, we're seeing people from all over. I love it. Fantastic. Oh, someone in Italy, amazing. Hey, Margarita, that's amazing. Blue Ridge, nice. Toronto. This is awesome. I just love seeing what everyone does and where everyone is. Everyone's based pretty all over as well, which is fantastic. So I love that. And we've got lots of people. If you've just joined us, please just pop in the chat where you are and what you do creatively, right? Where you are in the world and what you do creatively. It's just lovely to see where everyone's at. All right. I think we should get into it. I'll hand over to you, Jess, so we can get
All right.
underway.
Hello and welcome to our outreach webinar. I am Jess Miller, designer and illustrator, and I've been working with creative business coach Logan Elliott since 2022. And over the past 2 years, Logan helped me scale my creative business, doubling and even tripling my monthly income. And through his program, we crafted actionable goals, priced my offerings with confidence, and Logan kept me accountable. Logan has since worked with hundreds of designers and visual creatives, helping them leave their toxic day jobs and build a business of their dreams. After this webinar, we'll be posting a link to the survey, and Logan is giving away 3 coaching calls. So definitely fill it out for a chance to win. And now I am going to hand it back over to Logan.
Amazing. Honestly, I'm so excited about running this webinar with you, Jess. I know we've done a couple of webinars in the past as well, and it's just so good. This topic here is such an important one. And when we were talking about like what we could run, it was like outreach was just pretty obvious for this one. We were like, let's do one on outreach because it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, but it's also something that's incredibly effective. Right, so we're going to be really diving into that. So just to add a few extra things into what Jess mentioned, those of you that weren't aware, I'm from New Zealand originally. That's that accent. But we're a US-based business, but I spend a lot of my time in the US. But I am from New Zealand originally. So some people are like, UK, Logan, is it Australia? That's the most common one. People like, must be Australia. So definitely New Zealand. So there we go. And I've actually just spent a month in New Zealand. I was just there for all of August. And I'll tell you what, it was really cold. It was the opposite of what Jess is experiencing because in New Zealand, it's the middle of winter right now in New Zealand, which is kind of like mind-boggling. It's like literally, I almost got stuck in a snowstorm in my car in New Zealand. I was in this little hire car, and it's like hard to imagine when Jess is talking about like 105-degree temperatures. So there we go. Amazing. So look, my background is that I had my own creative business for 11 years. It was in the live event space with characters, performers, dancers in the events industry. I did that for a very long time, 11 years. And during that time, also got very involved in education, was doing a lot of teaching, contract work with universities, public programs, right up to a master's level. And, that obviously evolved over the years. And these days I'm full-time helping people to grow their own creative business. So the people we work with are very much in the visual creative space. They're illustrators, they're graphic designers, they're very much in the space of design, visual muralists as well. Most of our clients do tend to be from the US and Canada. We've had the odd client from outside there as well. But being a US business, we tend to focus mostly in the US and Canada. So that's a little bit about me. The people we tend to work with are kind of broken into 3 stages. First group are like, hey, I do this kind of on the side of a day job, or I'm a full-time parent and I would love to really scale up what I'm doing and maybe, do this actually full-time, leave the day job, right? So that's group 1. Group 2 are like, hey, I'm basically full-time already, but I really want to make this work. I want to diversify what I'm doing. I need more balance. I want to do more of the amazing work that I love, and I want to earn more as well. So that's the second group. And then occasionally we work with people that are like, hey, I've been doing this for like 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, and I just really want to get more sustainability and maybe pivot my offerings and often get more sustainable income as well. So that's just a bit of a download for everyone to give some background as well about me and the work that we do. We as part of this webinar here, what we are doing is we are giving away 3 freebie coaching calls with myself, and then a bunch of extra coaching calls with Paul from the team. Paul's here as well today. You see him there in the video. And look, we love being able to give away these freebie calls because it's really a chance for us to connect, share some ideas as well, and really help people out too, which is fantastic. What we do is we do have a survey that you need to fill in. It's a pretty quick form. I'd love you to fill it in either way because you're going to learn a bunch about yourself. It's really structured as a way to analyze where you're at. You'll get a copy of your answers too. I'm going to pop that in the link. Those of you that were watching the recording will make sure it's in the email, or in the links there as well. So definitely get that filled out. If that's something that you're excited about doing, fill that out. You can even just click it open now and fill it out after this webinar. And as I said, we'll pick 3 people to get on 30-minute coaching calls with myself, and a whole bunch of extra ones to get on calls with Paul as well. And honestly, people get so much value from those conversations we have there too. Amazing. Fantastic. Look, lovely to share all these different things, but let's get stuck into the outreach training. Honestly, I'm just so excited about this one. We called it Demystifying Outreach because we're like, a lot of people don't really get it, or they don't really believe it works, or it feels kind of scammy or pushy and these things here. And these are all true feelings that people have. Ultimately, outreach is something that does work. This is really, really important to note, is that this is something that is incredibly effective for visual creatives to use as a marketing strategy, right? Outreach, there's lots of different types of outreach. We're mostly going to be talking about email outreach. So you actually sending emails to ideal clients. So this is something we're going to really dig into during this webinar here. Now, I will say, outreach doesn't sound that exciting. It's not the most exciting sounding, marketing strategy. It's like, oh, outreach, but it's incredibly effective. And we do really find when you get into the groove of it, it can actually be quite enjoyable too. You can get a good system around it. You can get into a flow around it as well. It's something that we teach in all of our programs because we just know that it works, right? And that's what matters in the end, is actually getting you in front of the right people and getting you the sort of work that you're excited about as well. So I think that's really, really important, is that, it may not be super exciting, but it is something that works. Something I think about a lot is the fact that you are all doing amazing creative things with your work, very visually appealing work, right? You're not selling something that is really boring and not exciting, like vacuum cleaners or something like that, or insurance. No offense to anyone that sells vacuum cleaners or insurance, but what you're selling is something really valuable and appealing. So your outreach is going to be quite different, right? Even people that are not interested, they're going to be like, oh wow, this is really creative and really interesting, right? So this is a very important mindset for us to have, is that the value of what you're doing is really important. Plus, one of the things that we all experience is literally bots or things reaching out to us which are not really authentic or real. Right? This is you connecting with other people, with other humans as well. Yes, there's going to be elements of your outreach that are a bit more of a template, but also these personalization parts to it as well that we'll talk about a bit more. So today what we're going to do is, yes, help you to see the value. Hopefully you're starting to see the value already, but also get you some specific approaches and tactics and strategies around what you can do. If you've used outreach before, fantastic. This is going to help. If you've never done it before, even better. You're going to learn some more here today. So as we go through it, Jess is going to share a few thoughts as well after we go through each of those points. So the first thing I really want to dig into is around the difference between what we call warm outreach and cold outreach. Now, very, very important. These kind of are businessy terms, oh, what does this even mean? Warm outreach basically is when you contact people you've already worked with or people in your network, right? So it's kind of warm, right? They already know who you are. Potentially those of you that have been in business for a while, they might have worked with you in the past. They might have been probably very happy with what you did, right? Or it could be people in your own network. It could be like past colleagues, and maybe even friends or family. Like you can actually do some outreach to them, letting them know what you're up to. Now, this is going to be the most effective form of outreach. And this is actually the best place to start. If you're not doing this already, really important you do this before actually getting into cold outreach. Because effectively, we're going to talk about cold outreach today, and it's just a lower reply rate, right? It's less effective than warm outreach. So really important piece of this is making sure that people that you worked with previously or people in your network are very aware that you exist, and you've got to remind them that you exist occasionally. One of the best sources of ongoing opportunities and ongoing work for you is going to be past clients if you have past clients. However, they're probably not going to be proactive and always reach out to you. And this is something for me that is like really mind-boggling, is that you kind of think like if someone enjoyed working with you, when they have another project, surely they'll just reach out, right? Because they're like, oh, you're amazing. That last week you did was incredible, fantastic. You would think that they would just reach straight out to you when they have another project. Unfortunately, it's not always true. They actually need reminders to know that you exist. Why is this? Well, because their world is also busy. They have a lot happening personally and professionally, and they might have just forgotten. And they have 100 other things on their list to do today. So you actually connecting with them occasionally and being proactive and saying, hey, just touching base. I know we worked with you 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Just wanted to let you know that I have some availability coming up. Let me know if you've got any projects for September, October. Right? You being proactive and doing that, actually, it's amazing how often people will come back and say like, oh, amazing, thank you. I forgot about that project. That's right. Your work was amazing, right? It's like, oh, you always feel a bit offended, but they have busy lives too, right? And actually reminding them that you exist is going to be important. Same with people in your own network. We see this all the time where maybe even people's clients, friends or family aren't really fully aware of what they do. And it's not to say that maybe the friends or family are going to become the clients, but they might be telling other people about the work that you do. And if they're not clear on what you're really up to, well, they're not going to be telling other people. So this is a really important place to start, that warm network. Now, we will talk a bit more about cold outreach. Cold outreach is effectively people that don't know who you are, right? People that don't know you exist. And there's various forms of that. It kind of, you go from warm to colder, right? But someone completely cold is like someone that you've found online that you think is an ideal client, that you've got their email address, and you're going to email them. And they literally do not know who you are, right? So that is complete cold outreach. As I said, it works, but it's less effective than warm outreach. We know, for example, that a 10 to 20% reply rate from cold outreach is actually good, right? Like that's actually good. And then I know that can be a little demoralizing to saying that, hey, like 1 in 10, 1 in 5 people may even reply to you in the first place. And I'm not saying they're going to work with you, they're going to reply. That's for cold outreach. For warm outreach, you'll get a lot more replies because there's already a relationship and connection there. So we're going to dig more into these things, but obviously that warm outreach is really, really important as part of this. Jess, we'd love to hear some of your thoughts around these things as well, because I know it's a powerful one for you too.
Yeah, I've definitely done both warm and cold outreach. I think with warm outreach, you have an advantage because you've worked together in the past. So there's some kind of like mutual connection or shared interest. And if it was like if the project was successful, then you can always like remind them like, hey, like, I loved working on this. I enjoyed this. Like, do you have anything like that, that we can collaborate again? And even if they don't, I think it's good to just you're like in the forefront of their mind. So that when something does come up, they're like, oh, hey, like Jess said that she was available. And so, you'll be like the first person that they think of. And then something that Logan didn't touch on, I call it like lukewarm outreach. Is probably some of my favorites. So it's like a company that like I personally didn't work with, but maybe I saw like a friend or colleague like had a collection with them, and then I use that as like a connection. So I say like I reach out to this company and say like, oh, I saw that you worked with this artist and on this collection. I'm like, I am a lettering artist and I would love to do like a greeting card collection with you. So just kind of like mention that connection, even though it is like a cold outreach. And sometimes it works. It's like it's what I call a lukewarm outreach. And then cold outreach, of course, it's a little more difficult, right? Because you don't have any connection with this company. But I think that's when you can really like personalize it and show your research, especially like if you are really interested in this company, like go on their social media, find out like what kind of campaigns they're running or what kind of collection they've done in the past, and really show that you've done your research, and then explain why you're reaching out to them specifically and what kind of value you can bring.
These things are so powerful, and I just love what Jess has added to this as well, because like I think hearing from Jess is so important, because it's all very well for me to say, hey, this stuff works, but like hearing from Jess is like this stuff, these are strategies that Jess uses, and these things that do actually work. So powerful to hear that as well. Let's dig into the next thing we wanted to cover, which is really talking about the importance of knowing your target market. Before we dig into that, one thing I do want to do is get everyone sharing their Instagram URL in the chat. We're going to share ours as well. So Lisa from my team is going to pop that in the chat. Jess is going to pop hers in too. If everyone here on the call can also do the same, go find your URL, right? So go to literally a website and drop it in, like Celeste from my team's done. Don't just put the @ tag, but this is going to be a great opportunity to get you all connecting with other people here. We want to make sure that we're connecting and following with you all as well, if we're not already. But everyone here, pop your links in the chat as well, and then go through, click all the links, pop them all open, and follow everyone here, because this is part of building that connection, creative network as well, as actually connecting with other like-minded creatives too. Amazing. I see everyone's firing everything into the chat there. Fantastic. And quite a few familiar names there too, which is fantastic as well. Amazing. And just make sure, go through, click everyone's links, make sure that you're actually getting connected with all the amazing, lovely people on this webinar too. All right. So what we're going to do, as I said, is jump into the importance of knowing your target market. Now, this is really important when it comes to something like outreach, is you need to know who are you doing the outreach to, right? Specifically, we're talking about cold outreach, right? Yes, warm outreach, even lukewarm is kind of a bit more obvious. You're like, great, here's who I know. It's, my network, it's previous clients, maybe it's even people that have said no, right? Or declined proposals. You can do outreach to them, that's all warm. But when it comes to cold, you need to get really, really clear on who. Because I think this is one of the biggest challenges, is actually how to find ideal clients, how to find their details. Now, if you don't know who you're trying to find, well, it's kind of like that's going to be really tough. So really important thing in outreach is to know who your ideal clients are, so you can figure out where to then find the contact details. Right. So a really common thing that I see for creative people is like, Logan, I'm happy to work with anyone. Right. Absolutely. Like, I'm a creative person. I'm happy to work with anyone, and maybe even I've got lots of different things I can do. The problem is that people won't then resonate with your messaging. If you're just kind of generally creating, you're not really thinking about those ideal clients, well, people are not going to resonate. And when it comes to things like proactive marketing, like outreach, you're going to be like, who do I contact? I don't know. I guess I contact anyone, because anyone is an ideal client. What we need to do is get really clear on that. So this is something we work a lot with our clients on, is okay, like who are those ideal clients, right? And actually break them down. So my recommendation here is ideally break down your ideal clients into 3 groups. Could be more, could be 2 groups, could be 5 groups. But ideally you want to have 3 groups of ideal clients. Now, this is not to say you're not going to work with other people. Of course, you may. If they reach out to you and they say, hey, I'd love to work with you, you're not going to go like, no, they're not in my ideal target market, so I'm not gonna work with them. You still may work with them. That's totally fine. But a really important thing is you getting clear on who are those ideal clients. Because when it comes to outreach, you're now like, great, I now know who I want to search for clients for. So, for example, an ideal groups of ideal clients could be cafes, right? Depending on what sort of business you're running, what sort of things, cafes could be an ideal group of clients, right? Or it could be co-working spaces, or it could be like new parents, right? Like there's so many different ways you can group people, but the idea here is that you need to get clear on the things that you're offering. Who are you offering them to, right? So even if someone else, as I said, well, you're cafes, but let's say another food beverage organization reaches out to you, yeah, you can still work with them. But when it comes to outreach, you now know, okay, when I go to searching for the right contacts, I'm searching for cafes, right? That's a lot easier than, I don't know, anyone that would love my design services, right? So this is a really, really important part of this as well. You do need to be more targeted in that marketing. And it just really serves as a starting point for how to find the ideal client. We're going to talk separately next, giving you some tips and ideas about how to dig into that. But the top thing you need to do first is get clear on who that is. And that may evolve and change over time. That's okay. This may be an experiment. You might be like, I don't know, well, maybe I'll try cafe. Great, that's totally fine. And you may find that will change over time, but you do need somewhere to start if you're early stage in business, or even if you're further along, you often need to really break those groups down as well. So Jess, would love to hear some of your thoughts around these things as well.
Yeah, I think it's super important to identify that target market, and to do your research too, to find out, because like not all, like your artwork isn't going to fit for all companies. And so it's important to find the kind of company where it's like it's going to be a mutual fit for both parties. And to really like create almost like client personas. It really helps to visualize and refine your ideal client's characteristics. And I know this was one of like the first exercises I did taking Logan's program, was we would identify like 3 like potential clients, and then we had to give them like personas. And I think that really helped to kind of just to like personify this client. So they're not just like, you know, a company or a mystery, but you're actually like working for this person. And it's it was like almost like a test kind of like, but I think it was a really good exercise.
I think, it's so powerful, as Jess said here, to get like really clear on that. So like what we love doing is actually getting even clearer. Like I mentioned cafes, but actually it's the cafe owners who you're going to be reaching out to, right? Or maybe the cafe marketing manager, depending on if it's a chain or something. So like actually humanizing the stuff is so important, right? I think one of the things that, I think the word marketing itself is kind of like, right? Most of us are not super excited about that idea of like marketing and sales. It sounds very like corporate and businessy, right? The thing here is that marketing really is just sharing what you're up to, right? Sharing with other people, sharing with humans, with other individuals, right? The people that you're going to be connecting with, they have good days, they have bad days. Some of them have children. Some of them are thinking about, I have to pick up my kids at school today. Some of them are thinking about what are they going to make for dinner, right? It's working with other humans, working with other people. And the more we can do that when it comes to these processes, the better. The more we can understand that we're connecting with individuals. So getting clear on that and actually going, hey, like my ideal client is actually just an ideal as a person, as a human. They've got other needs, thoughts, ideas, challenges in their lives as well. The more we can humanize that, the more actually, this whole business of outreach is going to be not only effective, but also more enjoyable as well, because you're just really connecting with ideal people that you can help and you can add value to as well. We're gonna dive into talking about finding the right contact, right? So as I said, great. Number 1, get clear on who they are, right? Who are those ideal groups? Because that's going to help you to start to go, okay, cool. If I'm going to be connecting with cafe owners, okay, well, now I need to figure out how to find those details. So often in most cases, what we're trying to find is their email address, right? So we're mostly talking about cold email here. Now, yes, you can do outreach through other methods. You can do outreach on Instagram DMs. You can get on LinkedIn. There's lots of ways to do outreach. These can all be very effective as well. But ultimately, you still need that person's contact details. So we're going to give you, a couple of different strategies around this. But I think the first thing I'll say up front is that, yes, this stuff is hard, right? Even people that do a lot of outreach and are very seasoned at this and been doing it a lot, they find this is actually one of the most difficult parts of the process, is actually finding the contact details. It can be time consuming, it can be frustrating, right? In terms of the actual messaging and what to say and, how to respond and those things there, like, yes, that takes some learning and some time and some approaches and strategies. But ultimately, it's something that when you get good at it, you're going to be good at it and you're going to keep doing that. It's going to be quicker. The thing that takes time is going to be this piece here, is the research, is finding those details. And not only finding their contact details, but ideally finding some information about them so you can make it more personalized as well. So very, very important to understand. Everyone finds it really difficult, frustrating, challenging as well. One of my biggest recommendations there is that you know that like that is an activity, that is a task to find the contact details, right? It's not that outreach is the big task and I'm going to go do some outreach right now. It's like, okay, I'm going to build a list, right? So you're going to sit down, you're going to block out 30 minutes of time or maybe an hour of your time. You go, okay, my task here is to find as many contact details I can of cafe owners in my region. Right, great. So that is your task, getting clear on that, and you can get focused on that. So a few strategies around them. Right now, I wish there was just like a list automatically, easily. There is a few around. I'm going to talk about that as well a little bit. But honestly, Googling, as naff as this sounds, is a very effective process here. is actually getting on Google and using keywords. Right. So as I said, if cafe owners are actually an example, well, you can literally write cafes in your town into Google, or your state, your country, right? You can actually get really clear, and it's going to take some time, some Googling. You'll start to use different keywords and different strategies around that. And you might find, okay, well, cafes isn't really working. So how about I use different words, coffee shop? Right, okay, well, let's try other one. Restaurants. Is that also going to get me into the ideal clients as well? So actually, it's going to take some time, but honestly, Googling is actually one of the most effective ways. Other things that you can do is, yes, social media, right? So you can use social media to actually find ideal clients. You can go through your own followings on social media. You can see who your followers are. You can see who other people's followers are. You can do some searching. This is commonly LinkedIn, Instagram, pretty common ones for this as well. And often through that, you can actually start to find people's contact details. You might be able to dig around, find their email address, find their websites, right? This is going to be part of that as well. And sometimes you can't find their email address, but you've found their Instagram account, so you can direct message them on Instagram. You could even say, hey, I'd love to send through a bit more info about what I do. Would love to hear your email address, or I'd love to get your email address. You can try that, you can test that as well. So, social media is one of the approaches to find the right people as well. Jess has already mentioned another one, which is actually take a look around and see who other people are working with, right? So if you've got, it could be people in your network, it could just be other general creatives that are doing very similar things to you. See who they're working with, who are they sharing that they've had projects with in the past, because they're probably actually employing and working with lots of creatives and open to it's not just one person they're going to work with, right? Obviously, it depends on what sorts of organization they are, but this can be a very effective way as well. So lists are a really interesting one. You'll find online, there tends to be lists. Sometimes you can find them for free. Often they're paid. So it's like, hey, list of all cafes in this region, and you might have to pay for that, $50, $100, sometimes more. Now, yes, you will come across these online. I'm pretty wary of them. I think, they sound amazing. Oh my goodness, you're saying I can just suddenly get like 300 contact details. Yes, sometimes it can be effective. We've seen occasionally it can be. Often it's not going to be money well spent, because those lists, they don't tend to be kept updated. Also, they're going to be getting a lot of people messaging them, right? So it's very, very competitive in terms of those lists. So as I said, we do have clients that have tested different things. Different things have been found over the years, but often it feels like a solution, a shortcut, when actually things like Googling, social media, those other things I mentioned are actually often going to be more effective in terms of your time and your money as well. So that's something to be aware of as well. The other things that we see people do is, look around local businesses or local products. Like, who are the businesses behind them? Looking on the back of labels, right? Like going into stores and looking, okay, what was the company that actually designed this product, right? You can actually get quite a lot out of doing that process as well. When you're out and about in the world, start thinking about, okay, the products, right? Who are they? I've got this, my blur's on, but I've got this really cool new kombucha brand that I just came across today, right? Like, you looking there at the supermarket, you're like, oh, this is really interesting. They probably paid someone to illustrate this can, and they might have another range coming out, right? So you could contact them and make them aware of your amazing services. So there's lots of different ways, and this is just really about getting creative to find those contact details, build that list, and that list is then what you're going to be doing with your cold emailing. Jess, would love to hear your thoughts and any extra strategies you use as well.
Yeah, there's three main ways that I find contacts, and one of them is networking events and conferences, whether that's in person or virtual. And this could be like an art fair or a design conference, or even some kind of like creative workshop. But we're all creatives, and we can share our contacts and share our resources, and just especially like in-person events. I think just like making that personal connection can go a long way. And then social media, of course. I lean in to Instagram DMs. So if there's a company that I'm interested in working with, I will shoot them a DM, and I'll just introduce myself and say hey, here's a link to my website, and go ahead and check out my Instagram grid. And sometimes I never hear back from them. Other times they're like, oh yeah, shoot an email at marketingwhatevercompany.com. So sometimes they point me in the right direction, and they will actually provide a contact name, so that that'll be a little easier than Google searching. And LinkedIn, a lot of people forget about LinkedIn, but it's a really powerful resource just to do your research. And so I will research a company, see what kind of art directors are working for that company. And then I will see who their contacts are. And it's a little investigative work, but I'll see if maybe there's like an assistant art director or associate art director, and I'll reach out to them as well. But LinkedIn can be a very powerful resource. And then of course, Google, like Logan said, before I've done like research in the past and I found a company I wanted to work with, I just looked on their about page and like they had little bios for everyone that worked there and they included their emails. And so then I just cold emailed them because I'm like, well, you're offering up this information. And like after a couple months, I thought that I wasn't going to hear from them, but a couple months later, they did contact me and they were interested in working with me. So you never know. I think just kind of like doing your own research and digging around on those websites, you can often find the information that you need. And I always keep a spreadsheet file with the company and the name, the contact, and what kind of response I received, just so that I don't do any kind of like duplicate email like too soon. I think it's important to follow up, but you never want to like, I don't know, send back-to-back emails by mistake to a company that you just reached out to. So spreadsheet is a good way to keep yourself organized.
It's I think the really great thing, as I said earlier, about hearing Jess talk about this stuff is like this is what people do, right? This is the effective stuff. I think, as I said, people are often looking for like what's the shortcut around this? And Jess is like, well, there's not really a shortcut. Like it takes being a bit of an investigator, right? And actually going and spending that time and energy and getting creative with this as well. Right. So this is a really important piece of this as well. We're going to talk next about what to do when it's not working. Right. So there might be people here who are like, I've tried outreach, Logan, right? Like, I've tried it, it doesn't work, or I'm trying it right now and it doesn't seem to be working. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'm going to really run through some of the things that we see that people get wrong, but also what to really think about when it's not working, right? So number one is really around your messaging, right? What you are saying, right? So, we do see occasionally people, what they're saying, what they're sending is just like, we're like, oh, probably wouldn't send that, right? Now, in terms of the things that people do wrong, it can be pretty varied, but sometimes it just doesn't sound very human, right? It sounds like it's just basically a template, copy paste email they're sending to everyone, right? So the very important thing here is you do need to make sure it's personalized. Yes, you can create a template email. Absolutely, you can, but you're going to need to leave some space at the top for a personalized component to it, right? The personalized component could be more about, what you know about the organization. Maybe you've been looking on their website, how you find their details, right? So something really unique for them, right? And that's going to do several things. One is you now sound like you're a real human, real person connecting with another human. And also it's actually going to help you keep out of the spam filters, right? Spam filters are one of the big challenges with cold outreach is that you never get the email into their inbox in the first place because Gmail, other email platforms have filters. They're looking for emails that are the same, repetitive, right? They're not personalized and they won't even make it into that person's inbox. They'll go into their spam folder, so they'll never see it, right? So this is a really, really important piece of it is actually to look at that messaging. What are you doing? This is something that we work with our clients as well. It's like, what are they saying? What can they be saying? Right. So that's the first thing is that sometimes the reason that you're not getting replies is because the stuff that you're saying is just not something that is generally what would be recommended, or it's repetitive, it's copy and paste template. Maybe it's fast doing that, but actually that's not always going to work. Something to also keep in mind, we've seen people over the years who've used different strategies around outreach, and sometimes they use software. There's different things that you can do, and sometimes it works okay for sure. Sometimes we also see software automations can actually mean you're more likely to end up in that spam folder, right? So that's something we've seen again and again is, hey, Logan, I've got this amazing system process that kind of automatically sends all these emails to people and they're not really personalized, but, I send a lot of emails, send hundreds of emails, but it's not working. I'm not getting replies. And I'm like, well, let's have a look, and it's kind of interesting because often it's the spam filters they're getting caught in, right? So that's one thing that, you want to look at first. That could be a reason why it's not working, right? And then it comes down to, are you sending enough? Now, this is actually the most common reason why it's not working is that ultimately it's the reply rate percentages I talked about earlier, right? As I said, like a 10 to 20% reply rate is actually good. Now we've seen a lot better than that. We've got some clients that'll get 30, 40, even 50% reply rates on cold email, which is phenomenal. That's fantastic. But 10 to 20% is actually saying you're probably doing something right. And there's several reasons for that. One, some are going to go to spam. Some are going to go to people's email folders or email systems, and they're just overwhelmed with emails, right? Most people on average, I'm sure there's some people here who have like 4,789 emails in their inbox right now. So if they get an email, they're just like, it's getting buried in all the other emails. And then there's some people that are just going to look at it and be like, not interesting, delete. Why is this person contacting? And that's fine as well, right? So there's going to be some people that look at it and go, oh, wow, this is really great. This is really interesting. But they don't reply. And maybe they even star it or mark it or save it and fold it. We've just seen that, right? So even if people are not replying, they might still be aware and they might contact you later. They might tell a friend about the work that you're doing, right? So this is something to be really aware of, is that often it's just that you need to be consistent. You need to be sending enough of those emails. If you've only sent 20 emails, well, if it's a 10% reply rate, you might get 2 replies. And remember, I'm saying replies. I'm not saying they're going to work with you or even show interest. They've just taken the time to actually do a response. All right. So obviously that means that if you're only sending a small number, 10 or 20, well, you're probably going to get a low response rate. But then if you start to send more every week or every month within your capacity, you are going to start to see those results. So sometimes it's just taking some time, and that it's not working. It's just that you need to keep at it. Recency bias is a big one as well. Recency bias basically is where whatever's happened recently is what you believe to be true, right? So let's say that you have sent a bunch of cold emails, and last week someone replied saying, how dare you email me, take me off this list, right? You'll be like, email doesn't work, it's spammy, it's terrible, it's ineffective, right? And even though maybe it was working for you in the past, right? So we've just got to get clear that consistently doing it's going to actually help you get there, and tracking what's really happening is a really important part of that. So are you getting that 10 to 20% reply rate, right? Most people don't know, right? They're just kind of guessing or based on what's recently happened. Last week, no one replied. Yeah, but if we look across the month, actually you're getting a 25% reply rate, which is good. If you keep doing this, you are going to be getting actual work and opportunities from that. Part of it is also testing, right? This is, when it comes to things, something's not working, you're going to have to test things, try different strategies. That could be testing different wording, right? Could be testing different approaches, different subject lines, right? Experimentation is going to be part of this as well. Even something that is working may stop working at some point, and that's actually okay, right? You might be like, the strategy is not working anymore. Okay, well, it's just saying you need to try a new strategy, and that's okay. I know it's frustrating, but this is a very normal thing. And the other strategy may start working again, but things do shift over time in terms of what works. The final thing I'll mention on this is just really around understanding that your offers or your target markets could just be wrong, right? So Jess kind of talked about this as well, as like the things that, you're creating value around. Maybe there's not a need in that ideal client, right? Maybe they're just like not interested in the thing that you do, right? So yes, that can be, the types of clients you're messaging, maybe it's just the wrong fit, or the types of things that you're offering, or the way that you're offering them, or the way that you promote yourself, or the information online you've got about yourself is not up to enough of a standard to get the replies, right? Those can be part of it as well. What's interesting is that doesn't tend to be top of the list, right? It tends to be more that people are just not effectively being consistent and sending the emails to get the responses. But keep in mind, sometimes what you need to do is shift it, try a different group of people, a different ideal target market, or even start testing some different types of services you could offer. Jess, would love a few of your thoughts around this one as well.
Yeah, I think Logan covered most of it, but I think I just would stress if things aren't working with outreach, maybe try experimenting with different types of content, such as case studies, client testimonials, or just unique portfolio pieces that might resonate better with your audience. And I think I'm a big fan of passion projects. And I know when I was first starting out, it's I wanted to do a book cover design, and I wanted to do a gift card design. And I didn't have any of that in my portfolio. And so it's really hard to sell your services when you don't have that in your portfolio. So so that's when I just leaned into passion projects, and I was like, okay, if no one's going to hire me for this, I'm going to create my own client avatar, my own client brief, and I'm going to create this project and put it in my portfolio and kind of show them what I'm capable of doing. And so I always like to remind creatives of that you can always like lean back into passion projects and also be open to like seeking feedback. You know, if you have any contacts or colleagues in your network, like ask for honest feedback on your outreach attempts, and they might be able to offer you valuable insight that you haven't considered.
It's so powerful. I mean, this once again, like this stuff works, but it's these sorts of strategies that Jess and I are talking about that you need to really keep in mind, right? Because there's lots of different intricacies for this. We get that for sure. I'm going to talk about mindset next. So, mindset around outreach is a really important topic. Look, we're going to have some Q&A next. So if people do have questions, pop them in the chat. We've had a couple sent in before the call as well. But if you want to pop something in the chat there, we'll cover what we can in terms of questions. Look, when it comes to outreach, a big part of it is the mindset, the approach you have to have as you work into this stuff. How do you stay positive? How do you stay persistent as well? So I think the first thing here is understanding that there is opportunities out there, right? We're in a world where for visual creative people, there is so many different growing opportunities all the time. Yes, opportunities go up and down and the economy goes up and down and different things happen in the world. However, there's always amazing opportunities. So this is really, really important, is that the biggest reason the business is not getting the amount of traction or perhaps the revenue you want is because not enough of the right people know you exist. So this is where something like outreach is incredibly effective if you can actually do that, because you're now putting yourself out there. So if you say, there's no opportunities out there, everything's falling apart, the world's falling apart right now. Well, the problem with that mindset is that you're not going to take any action like send outreach emails, because what's the point? Right? You're going to feel demotivated. You're going to be like, maybe I'll try a couple. It didn't really work. What's the point? Right? So we know that mindset does play a part of it. And what's interesting about that mindset is that it'll be true. Right? If you believe there's no opportunities out there, that'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. There wouldn't be no opportunities out there because you're not putting the effort to. And you'll say, see, there's no opportunities. It's like, well, yes, but that's part of the mindset piece. So we've just got to be really aware of what mindset plays a part in these things as well. So understanding, yes, there is opportunities out there. You just need more of those right people to know you exist. As I mentioned, around outreach, experimentation is part of it, and it's always going to be part of it. This is not just hey, figured out the perfect strategy and it's just going to work forever and ever. Right? You're going to have to actually test different approaches within outreach, maybe different messaging, maybe different ways of finding those ideal clients. It's going to evolve and change. Right now, it's not going to change every week. That's okay. We're more talking about scales of months or years, but things will effectively change and evolve. So part of what you need to do as a creative business owner is test different things, try different strategies. Just like you do within your own creative practice, there's going to be experimentation and testing within the business practice side as well, such as the cold email outreach. And just, another reminder there around that mindset side is that it's a numbers game, right? 10 to 20% reply rate, like that can actually kind of feel a bit demoralizing. You're like, Logan, are you saying if I send 100 emails, then only I might get 10 to 20 replies? That feels pretty demoralizing, that like 80, 90 people have just like ignored you. Like, do those people hate your work? Do they think that you're worthless or something like that? It's like, well, no, most of the time they're not seeing it. They're too busy. It's not a priority for them. And maybe they're just not interested, and that's okay. Right. So understanding that you effectively keeping consistent on this is going to actually really get you there. Now, we know it does take time. We get that, right? We know that actually if you're starting off with outreach and you haven't done it before, to send that first email, to send the first 10 emails, you'll be like, how am I ever going to send 100 emails, Logan? That seems wild, right? It does take time. We totally get that. But it's really important to understand that you will be able to ramp things up over time. It will get easier. You will get faster. And ultimately, a really important mindset here is that you are sowing the seeds for the future in your business. You're sowing the seeds. You're getting more people to be aware that you exist. And we've seen this where people might reply to a cold email you sent a year ago. Now that's a seed that you've sowed a year ago. And you're like, we all want the quick gratification. We want that client to reply today within a week saying, yes, love what you do. I've got this perfect project, right? And it does actually happen, right? Which is incredible. However, actually, most of it is often, hey, great, good to be aware that you exist. And they're wanting to work with you later. Well, they now know you exist. And they're kind of waiting for the right timing as well. So just knowing that that's basically what you're doing is you're getting more people to be aware. They may not be the ones that end up working with you, but they might be the person that tells someone else they know about what you do. Right. So there's a flow on effect of things like outreach as well. You can't always measure it. You might be like, oh, I don't even know where this client came from. Well, actually, they came because through outreach, but because that person spoke to someone else. Right. So we do see really interesting things happening like that as well. So this is something that, as I said, it is really important because it does work, but the mindset side of it is important as well. Amazing. Jess, any thoughts around these things as well? Extra things to add?
Yeah, I think just having a positive mindset is so important during outreach because you're probably going to get discouraged, you're probably going to get rejection, and just know that rejection is like it's a natural thing. Like everyone's going to experience it, and don't make it personal. Like it's probably has nothing to do with you. It's just like their budget or their timing's not right, like whatever it is. But just try not to take it personally. And also just embrace a growth mindset. I think that's super important. Just know that there's going to be other opportunities, maybe not now, but like Logan was saying, like you planted seeds that could grow into a tree like later down the road. Like you never know. And I think it's more about building relationships instead of just like selling your products or your services. Like sometimes I've reached out to companies just to like make some kind of contact with them. I just wanted to build some kind of relationship with them and get to know them instead of just saying like, here, hire me, and act desperate. But I think it's more about, just building that relationship. And just practicing self-care too. Like I know outreach can be really draining and very discouraging. So especially when you don't get the kind of results that you want, just know that just remember to take breaks and like set boundaries for yourself and take care of your mental health.
So important. And the wellness side is something that people forget about often, right? They're like, no, I need to like push, I need to do more. It's like, well, sometimes the thing that's going to grow you personally and professionally is to take that rest, take that break, take that time off as well. So I love that. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump into some questions. So we do have a few questions that were sent in, and then we'll definitely address what we can from the chat as well. Just before we jump to that Q&A, just a reminder about that survey as well. We'd love everyone here to open this link. I've just popped in the chat. People that are watching online, we'll make sure it's in the links there as well. So just check and find that link, fill that in. As I said, we'll go through and pick people from this for calls with me and calls with Paul as well. And we'll be doing that over the next week. So definitely get that filled in. Do it after this call. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. We also have a question there, which is for everyone. What's something that a question that you have, and we'll get that answered as well. And that there too, even if you don't end up getting on a call with myself or Paul. All right, so we're going to jump into this first question here that we were sent in. So I'm just going to pull this up at my end here. So I love this question because I think this is really for a lot of people here. Where do you recommend to start for first time cold outreach? Right. So those of you here, I'm sure there's some of you here that are like, yeah, that's me. I've never done this before. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if this is going to work. Where do you start? Right. So the first thing is just be aware that you're probably going to feel a bit odd. You're going to feel like you're like a bit spammy, or it's just going to feel odd. It's a weird process to get into, right? So that's something that you're going to feel initially. We see this with all of our clients that have never done it before. There's some stuff that they need to work through in terms of their own mindset of going, oh, is this me being too spammy or pushy? And going, hey, no, this is just a way to get yourself and your amazing work out there to these people so that they know you exist. Right. So just noticing that. The first thing you really want to do is you really want to break things down into small tasks. Yes, you're going to have to send a lot of emails to get effective responses. Right? As I said, 100 emails is like, if you've never done this before, you're like, 100 emails, Logan, that's going to take me years. It's going to take me many years. It's going to take me a decade. It seems really impossible, right? So the first email is literally going to take you the longest, right? And you'll be like, this does not seem sustainable. And that's okay. It gets a lot easier from there. So when I say break things down into small tasks, well, break them down into small tasks. What is something that you need to do? Well, one thing that you need to do is find some contacts. Just like we talked about. Okay, well, can you build a list? You don't need 100 on that list. How about you see if you can find 5 contacts? Or if you've never done this before, search out, see if you can find 5 emails of ideal clients. They think people that you think might be interested and that you would be excited to work with. Right, so that is a task. Rather than getting overwhelmed with, I've got to send all these emails, do all this, create this whole system. It's like, no, all you need to do right now is take half an hour and see if you can find 5. Yes, that's probably going to take you longer than half an hour if you've never done it before. It might take you 2 hours. That's okay. It will get faster and will get easier. But starting slow is going to be really important. Work on the messaging. This is a separate task as well. What am I going to say? Create a basic template, right? A basic email that you can send. That is a separate task, right? So those two things there, you've got, okay, great. I've now got my 5 and I've got an email. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not. Are you going to need to test it? Probably. But what's the next action? Send an email. Send one email, right? You do not need to send 100. You need to just send one. The first email, as I said, takes the longest, but this is actually the thing that you need to do. If you're starting for the first time in cold email outreach, your aim is to send a cold email. Your aim is not to even get a reply. Your aim is to just send an email, because you're probably not going to get a reply based on the statistics that we're sharing. You may, right? Fantastic. You know, we had a client, I think it was a few months back, who I think sent their first 10 emails and they got a paid contract out of one of them. And we were just like, okay, that doesn't normally happen, just so you're aware. Right? Amazing. It was great. We were celebrating that. We were like, just so you're aware. And, you know, it's important to understand that actually part of what you're doing is you're learning the system and the process here of doing this. So starting with those small tasks. You know, I really think a lot about like keeping those tasks really attainable, really easy, really simple. Create a list of 5. If that feels so overwhelming, create a list of 1. You just need one person to reach out to, right? Break these things down and know that it will get more effective and easier. This next question we've got here, going to direct to you, Jess. So what advice would you give yourself 3 years ago in order to get to where you are today faster? What an amazing question. Do you want to share some thoughts around that one?
Yeah, I would definitely do my research on the clients, because I think when I was first starting out, I was just like, I want to work with anybody. And not every client is going to be a good fit for your artwork and vice versa. So definitely do your research and go trend shopping. You know, that might be like kind of Logan mentioned before, go to your favorite bookstore or shop and then just start like flipping over products and seeing who makes them and seeing if your art would fit well on their products. And then take some time to do that investigative work and to try plugging in names. Like Google can be super powerful resource. And I did that when I was first starting out. I would just type in like art director at anthropology, and I would try like different combinations and like plug in those emails. And you know, I'd get a lot of like bounce back emails, but then sometimes I'd get a hit and I'd be like, okay, that email went through, like that person does work there. And so, you know, they message received. So that, and I think not to get discouraged and just know that it just adopt like a growth mindset, because I think everyone that it does outreach experiences some kind of rejection or crickets or something, and just know that yeah, like Logan said, like 10 to 20% like response rate is actually really good, and know that that's actually pretty good numbers to have. So yeah, I think that's what I would do.
I love it. And amazing question as well, I think too, which is a fun one. Okay, so another question we got sent, which was I'm struggling to find some paid work. What calls to action or methods have worked for you when starting out? So I'm going to jump into this one here. You know, and I think look, the biggest reason we're seeing that people are not getting the paid work opportunities that they want is actually just because they're not really doing the marketing stuff they need to do, right? They're kind of like waiting for the work to come to them. So part of it is getting proactive. Now, I know that can kind of feel a bit overwhelming, right? But marketing, you do not need to be everywhere doing everything. You need to test some targeted approaches. Outreach is just an example of a targeted approach, right? So that's the biggest thing here I want people to really get clear on, is like, if you're like it's not working, no one's working with me right now, I've got no paid projects. For most of the time, if I dug into what you're actually doing marketing wise, I would say, look, you're just not really doing much marketing at all, and it's just not enough. However, there's a lot you can do. And I think that's really empowering when we realize, you know what, like there's a lot you can do. There's a lot of different marketing approaches. And we're just talking about one of them today, which is outreach. So one of the beautiful things about outreach is that you can send more emails. You can spend more time on this, right? It's, you know, it's something that you can spend more energy on. In terms of good calls to action, obviously it's going to depend on what we're talking about. We're talking about cold email or warm email. I mentioned one earlier on, which is really good for your warm market, right? So people that already know about you. Is that call to action can be just saying, hey, I've got some availability coming up in this time frame. I'm available in this time period. I just wanted to let you know that I'm opening up spots for this season, or I have some gaps in my schedule. Do you have any projects that you want help with? Right? That there's a great call to action because it's not desperate. Right? If you contact them and say, hey, have you got any work at the moment? They're going to be like, oh, okay, they sound kind of desperate. And people do not like working with people that are desperate, unfortunately. Right? It's just one of the annoying realities of the world. However, if you're saying, hey, just to let you know, I've got some availability coming up, it kind of says a couple of things. It says, hey, you're quite busy, and you're just letting them know you've got some availability then. And if they contact you in 2 months' time, when it is then, you might be too busy. You currently have some availability. So that there is a really great call to action. The other thing that you can do, and you can do this in lots of different places, social media is a pretty common one, is you just basically say you are available, right? Putting on your social media, have availability, right? Putting it on your profile, or even doing a post saying, you know, I have some spots for work, for design work in the coming months or in an X time frame. You can actually be quite proactive around that. It's basically, we call it a blunt post. It's being really blunt if you're doing an Instagram post there saying, I'm available, right? And it's amazing how often that can be effective, even though you think people, you know, would know that you're available because you do this full time. Well, a lot of people might just assume you're really, really busy right now. You might be like, well, I like the idea that you think I'm busy, but you're not contacting me as a result, right? So this is something you can do as well, is actually have that call to action of like, you know, currently have some spots for design work in October, right? You could put things like this on your profile as well. Currently booking for Q4, currently, you know, have availability in December, right? These are the sorts of things you can do as well. So there's a couple of extra things on that. Might be a good one for you, Jess, as well. Do you have subject lines? Do you have any like tips around that for people, things that you use, strategies you've tried? I mean, experimentation's part of it, but we'd love to hear if there's any thoughts you have there.
I just, especially if it's cold outreach, I just try to make it like an introduction, like, you know, a hello, or, you know, possible collaboration or ways that we can connect, just to like build that relationship. Stress that more so than like, hire me, because like Logan was saying, I think that like voice of desperation can come off. But if you make it just sound like an introduction, or some kind of way that you can build that relationship, then I think it'll come across better.
Amazing. I love that. We're going to go through a few more of these here. So for Tessa, how to know when your portfolio is ready enough to send out. It always feels like work in progress. I'm gonna jump into this one really briefly. Tessa, it's probably already good enough, right? Most people actually don't send it early enough, right? They're like, no, everything has to be perfect, right? Now, obviously, you know, I don't know you, so we don't know the specific situation here, but often that's what we see, is that you can actually start building those connections a lot earlier than you think. And yes, your portfolio is going to keep improving as well, and you could be emailing them again in a year's time, again, even if they haven't replied, with an update, right? So this is important as well. We see that people get opportunities, especially when they're early stage in their business, a lot earlier than they could ever believe, off a very little amount of portfolio work. Obviously, it's an ongoing thing to add more to your portfolio, had more examples of your work. And just talked about, you know, personal projects, right? Getting more through that in your portfolio. Absolutely. But also, we've seen people who have like a very small number of examples of designs and work they've done who have got opportunities through cold outreach because they've started now rather than just waiting till it's like fully fleshed out and perfect. So I think that's a really, really important one there as well. Another question there, how can you personalize an email that is sent to a generic customer service area? Because there's no contact info. This is something that you're going to see. Those of you that are doing cold outreach, you're going to come across and you're like, great, I have like info at this person here. At this business here. So look, you can do the classic to whom this may concern. You can be like, hi, just reaching out to the team at, right? Or you could even ask and say, hey, I'm not sure who's in charge of this area. Can you forward this on to the right contact? Right, so you can actually do that, and it might end up with, say, an administrator who will then forward it on to the marketing manager. Right, so that can happen there as well. That's a really, really interesting thing that can work too.
I was just gonna say that too. Like, especially if it's like an info or whatever, where it's just super generic, try to personalize yourself as much as possible and just say like, this is me, this is my offerings, this is what I do. And then say like, oh, by the way, like, do you know, someone where I could like forward this information on to? Can you provide a contact? And that's usually what I do in those scenarios.
And part of it's going to be testing, right? We've even seen people
Mhm.
like who can't find the email addresses. So they actually have found an organization person. They'll actually put that person's name at the email address and they'll test it. And it's either going to rebound and not work, but sometimes it does. So there's lots of different
Or
things you can do there.
you could do an even old school approach and call customer service, like call and ask, hey, do you know this person's name and their email address? And I know some people that have done that. And it is kind of like an old fashioned, like unconventional way. And it does take some gumption. You're like, oh, this person, like you actually called like customer service to like find more information. But sometimes it can lead to like you can get a direct lead from that.
And I think that that's such an interesting thing. There's like this stuff that people maybe used to do in the past. Well, there's less competition for it, right? Because it is kind of terrifying, right?
Yeah.
So actually, sometimes it's doing these things here, or even like we've even had clients that have been doing like physical mail, right? Physical mail out. Like you can get because no one else is really doing this stuff anymore as well. Look, it is time. We've gone through lots of different things here as well. Honestly, it's just been such a fantastic webinar. Loved all the different questions and engagement we've had here as well. So we are going to start to wrap things up here for this. Obviously, as I said, would love to connect with a whole bunch of you through that survey. Do fill that in. It's in the links there as well. If you just scroll up, you'll be able to see it. So just pop that open. We will also be sending this out to everyone that signed up for it. The recording out as well, and they'll include all these links in there as well. We'll try and get that out as soon as possible after this call as well. But it's been a fun one, hasn't it, Jess? It's been a good
Yeah,
one today.
yeah, it's been a pleasure.
So good. So everyone, lovely to see you all, those of you here live, and thanks for watching the recording. Those that watch the recording, we're going to wrap things up there now. Just as we do wrap up, I would love everyone to place one thing in the chat. What is one takeaway? What is one thing that you've learned from today? Right, just pop that in the chat. What's something you found interesting just as we start to wrap up? I know some people need to leave straight away. All good. But just pop in the chat. What have you learned? What have you found interesting? What have you found engaging? What's something that's been surprising? Just popping that there in the chat. What have you found helpful, interesting, amazing, fantastic? We'll wrap things up there. Honestly, it's been such a lovely another webinar with you, Jess. And looking forward to really connecting with lots of people that connect with us through this as well. We've got a few interesting things popping in there in the chat. Interesting. Love to start before you're ready. Yeah, start before you're ready rather than having that impressive portfolio. Amazing. Great things being added. 10 to 20% response rate. Amazing. All right, we're going to wrap things up there. Thank you so much, Jess, and we're going to wrap it all up. Take care.
Take care.